She's a professor at the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law and the director of the Community Justice and Civil Rights Clinic. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Considering the crime, do you think that this was a just sentence?
Well, I think there's really two takeaways from the sentence and from the hearing that happened today. The first one really has to do with the extensive reach of racialized state violence. And I think that was documented so powerfully in the impact statements that we just heard. When we heard Gianna talking about how much she misses brushing her teeth with her father. We watched Mr. Floyd's two adult brothers really break down, talking about what it's been like for them. We listened to the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota talk about the impact of George Floyd's murder on those who witnessed Derek Chauvin choking the life out of George Floyd, who witnessed Derek Chauvin refusing aid for Mr. Floyd when he was laying prone on the ground. And a 22-year-old prison sentence, a 22-year-long prison sentence, really no prison sentence of any length whatsoever, could remedy all of the harm that was left in the wake of George Floyd's murder. There's really a fundamental misalignment of the scope of the harm here and the remedy provided by the criminal legal system.
That does bring up a very critical point here, Sheila. It is no doubt, when you combine the verdict with the sentence here, a landmark event. But do you think it's a watershed moment that could begin the process, the slow and difficult process of making real effective change where black and brown people are not subjected to this kind of violence?
You're in the intro, you noted that Derek Chauvin's attorneys argued for a much lesser sentence. And in making that argument, one of the things that they argued was that Derek Chauvin was just an actor in a broken system. And that's one of the reasons why his sentence should be reduced. Now, I don't think the policing system's broken. I think it is functioning just as it was designed, as a tool of white supremacy, as a tool of racialized violence. But Derek Chauvin was a product of that system for 19 years. He learned how to use violence. He learned how to equate blackness with criminality. And his prison sentence leaves that system very much intact. So until we get at the root of the cause here, which is really the very institution of policing, I don't think we can claim victory here. I don't think we can think of this as a watershed until we really address the institution of policing and the violence and white supremacy that infects the institution.
Professor, you heard the judge, Peter Cahill, say that he based his sentencing decision not on emotion or sympathy. He knows there's deep and tremendous pain from for each family. He also said he didn't base it on public opinion or trying to send a message, but for something that has had such an impact on the country. Do you think that there should have been a little bit of that based in his decision?
Well, look, I think it's impossible that the global movement that was inspired in the wake of George Floyd's death didn't influence the proceedings here. I mean, judges are human beings. It's clear that this judge took his work very seriously. We also know that it is incredibly difficult to prosecute police officers. It's incredibly difficult because the law provides them with so many protections. I think it's important to think about what is the purpose of the prison sentence here. Hopefully, it could have turned out in a way that would have given George Floyd's family and those who loved him some peace, some recognition that their voices were heard. But there is no way that a single prison sentence could have gotten at the core issues that really led to George Floyd's death. And it's not about one bad, violent police officer. It's about the institution of policing. It's about the ways in which Derek Chauvin was taught to police, and it's about the ways in which police have been held unaccountable for the violence that has happened for generations.
This issue is far from over. Professor Sheila Betty, thank you so much. Director of the Community Justice and Civil Rights Clinic at Northwestern University. Be safe, be well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Stay with WGN for continuing coverage of today's sentencing at 6:30. We'll have a reaction from local activists on the sentencing, and we'll have a complete wrap-up on the WGN News at 9 and 10. For updates anytime, head to WGNTV.com or download the free WGN